Hi, I'm Tim Stapleton, owner of GT Automotive in South Jordan, Utah. Here just to talk for a few minutes about some of the top problems with Subarus. We love our Subarus, and my first one was in 1973. I owned a 73 Subaru and been driving them ever since, so I really like them. But they do have issues like every car, and probably the top issue with Subaru is still the head gaskets. And the head gaskets are down inside the engine. We'll raise this one up and take a peek at it and show you what it is and what can be done. Probably the number one complaint with Subarus, and a lot of it is because it's kind of expensive to fix, and that is the head gaskets tend to leak after a while. And where they leak is right down in the corner of the head gasket. It'll either be a green antifreeze or a dark oily substance from the oil leaking. And they'll leak externally. Sometimes they'll leak internally also, and that'll cause a white smoke to blow out the exhaust. But the most common is the external leak on those gaskets. These are Subaru head gaskets right here. This is one from the factory, and you can see it's very thin. And they leak, they breach across the corner here and leak externally. The ones we replace them with are aftermarket. In other words, they're not made by Subaru, but they're actually made a lot better. And they are a sandwich type of gasket, and they seal much better, and we never have a problem with them coming back with leaks once we've replaced them with these. Another common complaint with Subarus is it's called the DOJ Joint. It stands for double offset joint. It's similar to the CV joint or the constant velocity joint, and what it does is it allows the axle to turn and move up and down. But this right here is the catalytic converter gets extremely hot when the car is driving, and because it's so close to this boot, it tends to dry that boot out and split it open, and then the grease flies out, and it'll start making noise when you turn or when you accelerate. Another issue with Subaru being all-wheel drive is the fact that it's a little harder on the brakes and the tires, because it's kind of like it's always in four-wheel drive. And so sometimes you'll feel it bind up when you turn or when you're in a parking lot and you're not going very fast, you're making a sharp turn. One of the issues is if you blow out the tire and it's not repairable, now you've got 3 tires that are half worn, and if you try to put one new tire on there, it'll cause problems with the all-wheel drive, and so you have to replace all 4 of them, or it'll bind up all of them. Another issue with Subaru or any car with a timing belt is the timing belt stripping out the teeth or breaking or cracking. And what happens is with Subarus, the belts are so long that happens a lot easier than some of the shorter ones. The timing belt is down underneath these covers, which you can't see anything, but which is the other reason why it's dangerous, is because you can't see it, you can't tell how worn or cracked it is, and it takes a fair amount of work to get those covers off and get down to the timing belt. Now, in cars that don't have the timing belt, the newer Subarus have gone to a timing chain like many other cars, and those have an issue where they leak. The cover for the timing chain leaks, and we have to go in there and take off, it's 20 or 30 screws that hold that cover on and reseal it. We're just saying that timing belts on Subarus are quite long. You can see it's one continuous belt going all the way around here. So because of the length, it's easy for it to stretch and get loose and then knock the teeth off of the belt where it hits the cogs on the gears. And when that happens, then the valves can hit the head and that sort of thing and end up bending valves on a lot of the models. Also, whenever you do the timing belt, it's usually recommended to do the water pump at the same time. The water pump is right here and is driven by the timing belt. So if you weren't to do the water pump when you do the timing belt and had to do it later on, you'd have to take this timing belt off again to do that water pump. So it's a much better idea to do it all at once. Another issue is the spark plugs. As the gap wears out in them, it takes more and more voltage to fire. You can see the difference between those 2 plugs, the one below, the lower one being the older one, and the upper one being brand new. And so these electrodes, as they wear, it takes more and more voltage to fire. The coils in them are capable of putting out 50,000–60,000 volts or more, but not for a very long period of time. It normally takes around 10,000 or 15,000 volts to fire a new plug. And so if they're required to do it a lot, by the time you get the spark plugs replaced, you've already wiped out the coil and the modules. And so that's why we recommend doing the spark plugs at 60,000 miles, even though they may suggesting you can go longer. One of the reasons why it is expensive to do the spark plugs is because you can see on this engine, the wires go right down into the middle of the motor, and you have to lift the engine up out of the car a little ways and remove all these things on both sides so that you can get to them and have them replaced. The bottom line is, at the end, is if you keep the car serviced and follow the intervals and the suggestions of the technicians and the place that you take it in to repair, then a lot of these problems won't become problems, and you can get them taken care of before they leave you stranded anywhere. At GT Automotive, we try to develop relationships with people and get to know both them and their cars so that we can make suggestions to you as to what things are important and what things can wait.